Hello, and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. We are here to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. My name is John Ainsworth, and today's guest is Andrew Barry. Now, Andrew is the founder of Curious Lion, which is a training design firm reimagining the way that companies like PagerDuty, Pinterest, and KPMG transform their people. He's also the creator of Course of Action, a self-paced program and creator community for aspiring course creators who are working towards making Andrew's vision that everybody has an online course in them into a reality. So today we're going to talk about creating better courses with a compelling transformation, getting clients through email marketing, and how teaching and marketing are similar. Now, before we start learning from Andrew, I want to mention our sponsor. Today's sponsor is my company, Data Driven Marketing. And what we do is we help online course creators to increase their revenue, normally between about 2 and 5 times, through building a sales funnel. We help you convert more visitors into leads, leads into sales, and sales into higher revenue sales. And if you want to learn how that looks and what all those steps are, go to datadrivenmarketing.co and click on the free training link. And there is a webinar that's going to take you through all of the steps and how to implement them in your business. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
So who do you help with your courses? I gave a little overview, but I'd love it if you talk us through in a bit more detail.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. So I work with course creators. My background, you mentioned I have this company, Curious Lions. We have a sort of enterprise division and a consumer division. And enterprise division, I've been since the inception of the company for five or so years, working with companies, corporates, helping them reimagine the way their people learn. And for the last just over a year now, I've been focusing and building out this consumer side, working with individuals to help them create courses, focusing initially on how to create a transformational student experience, how to transform people, and then building it out into leveraging a lot of experts actually as well that I've managed to become friends with along the way to try and cover that whole spectrum of what goes into making a course.
Nice. So with the enterprise side of stuff, how does that one work? Are you going into businesses and working with an existing team there? Are you helping them to create someone there to create the course? Like what's involved in that part?
Yeah, what's funny is it's sort of changed quite a bit in the last year, maybe a bit longer, like since COVID, since the pandemic has happened, in that a lot of what I've been doing and learning, I'm also, by the way, I'm an avid student of online courses. I take like 3 or 4 a year, spend way too much money on it a year. And I've learned so much from how those course creators, I feel like I call them indie creators, are the ones that are really pushing the boundaries of what is possible in a virtual online environment. And so previously with my company, we were helping, to answer your question, companies create like more engaging learning. And sometimes that was in person, sometimes it was video, a lot of video actually. In the last 18 months, we've been helping them create cohort-based courses inside their companies. So leveraging the asynchronous content they have, we also help them create more if they need it, but then bring people together to talk and learn from each other. And as we all know, anybody who's taken cohort-based courses, that's where you accelerate your learning. So it's been kind of cool to see those two worlds start to collide. And there's a lot of interest in the corporate side now for, I think, what those indie creators have been doing.
That is fascinating. So do you feel that there's more for the enterprise to learn from the indie creators, or is there a lot for indie creators to learn from what enterprise are doing around this as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what indie creators need to learn, and I help those that are in my coaching program with this, is how to sell to corporates, like knowing what that buying process is like, knowing how long that sales cycle is. It's a whole nother beast than trying to sell online to consumers. So I think that's the big lesson there. But yeah, I think probably the balance is on corporate having a lot to learn from what those of us who are in this online course world and as consumers and creators have known now for sort of not even just 18 months, for longer. So yeah, I think there is a lot for them to learn.
Nice. And where's your course business at the moment, revenue wise? About what kind of level you're at?
Yeah, so it's been a crazy year. So I did my very first launch at the beginning of this year. I partnered with a company called On Deck for 6 months and launched the first version of that course. That was a true cohort-based course. It was 8 weeks, 2 sessions a week, plus a bunch of guest sessions, extremely intense. And I also swear I'll never do that level of intensity again. It literally almost killed me, but it was amazing. We had 150 people in that cohort. We did 350,000 in revenue. We gave out another 40 or so in scholarships. So that's really kind of launched. And we can go into the backstory of this. I only announced sort of on Twitter in November of the year before, so November of 2020, that I was going to do this course. I'd been up until then having lots of just one-on-ones with people and kind of helping people and posting a lot of stuff on Twitter, which was doing well. And then I announced in November, hey, I'm going to do this course. Who's interested? Probably about 70 signed up for an email list that I set up. And that just slowly built and built. And then I joined this company, launched the course, 150 students, and that kind of really just took off from there. So to complete the answer to this question, I've launched 2 products since then. The Selfpaced one you mentioned, which we did about 10K in the space of 2 weeks, doing a launch, just textbook, stuff you probably talk about all the time, textbook launch to a list I'd built up. It's only 700 people, but we did 10K on that. And then I have this coaching program that I mentioned where it's a 10K a year program, and we work with people over the course of a year. Because also what I learned from doing an 8-week program is there's too much to cover in 8 weeks. You need time, and more importantly, people need time to put the work in and experiment. And you don't know this as a marketer as well. Like, you got to run these experiments and give it time to get the data back to say that worked, that didn't work. So that's why that program is a year long. That's 10K, and we have 12 people in that. So yeah, it's pushing on 500,000 this year that in total revenue from helping people create courses, which is awesome. It just shows how much potential and value there is in the space, right?
Oh my goodness. Like, I think that COVID, there's all kinds of industries where it caused mayhem, but the online course world is one where it's like it has accelerated things dramatically. Because everyone's like, goodness, I need to have one of these. I should have a course. This is like, I can't do this thing in person anymore. Let's take this and put it online. And it hasn't really affected us that much in terms of like additional interest, because we mostly deal with people after they've been doing this for a few years and they've built up the courses and they've built up the audience. But we have got some people who are in our program now who they started at the beginning of COVID and they just went for it hell for leather, and they happened to be in a niche where it worked well and things all came together, and now they're really crushing it. It's been a big deal. And if you look back at the stats of the growth of the online course space, it was growing at about 10%-ish, 12% a year was the kind of the estimates. And now, since COVID started, it's about 20-23%, something like that. So it's like, in terms of revenue from it, it's very exciting. I love online courses. That's part of the reason I got into the space, is I've taken so many online courses.
Yeah.
I hear people say sometimes, but most people don't finish them. Or it's like, well, that's okay. You might have a problem with your course if people aren't finishing it, but also it's like, for the people who do finish it, this is so powerful. They're so good. Oh my goodness.
It's like a cheat code almost. Like you can consider, I did this speaking one about a year ago now, and it totally changed the way I communicate what my business does. It was incredible. I also want to just add to what you said. I think we're also only at the beginning. Like this rapid growth is huge. And one example, to go back to that corporate world experience I had, my friends and even clients that are still in that, and because I come from that world as well. I was at KPMG for almost over a decade. A lot of them haven't even heard of online courses. They don't know that there's this thing, right? They get training at their company, and that's training. Like they don't, which is obviously shit as well. So like, they're not even like, right? So there is like, to me, this tsunami, like a wall that's going to break, and this tsunami of people of demand coming in, where they get a taste for this and they go, oh geez, I can accelerate my career with this course and this course, learn how to write, learn how to speak better, like all these things. And then that's just going to, and then some of those people will realize they can create their own courses as well. And it's just another explosion waiting to happen.
So let's dig into, there's a couple of different angles we've hit there. Let's dig into one, which was about people not finishing the courses. So I know one of the things that you do is help people to create great courses. So could you take us through like what's some of the steps that people have to go through in order to be able to do that?
Yeah. So I call it Transformational online courses. That was initially going to be the name of my program. And a lot of what I talk about is around this word transformational. And so what I initially did was, from taking a lot of these courses and from just knowing the world of adult learning, I started decoding what a lot of great courses were doing. And I saw those patterns across all the best ones. And there's a lot of different factors, but there are three kind of main ones that popped up a lot. And it's a great starting point for anyone who's looking to make theirs transformational. To make it easy to remember, it's 3 Ps. So those are personal meaning, prompts to action, and peer-to-peer learning. So personal meaning means getting your students to reflect on why they are doing the course. No one is going to take action and actually do the steps that you're recommending for them unless they're connecting with some intrinsic motivation for it, right? You can create all the great extrinsic stuff of leaderboards and gamified and blah, 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 but none of that's going to make any difference against a true intrinsic motivation to do the course. So you'll see a lot of great online courses have activities early on that get people to reflect on their own values or their own, vision for their next 12 months, like that kind of stuff, and you can then connect that to your course by saying, like, write an essay about this or create a 5-minute YouTube video or whatever. But you've also done that personal reflection. You've gotten deeper to like why you are learning this thing. So that's the first one. And then prompts to action follows from that, is you as the course creator giving people specific recommended action steps to take. And that's super important from their perspective because that's deliberate practice. So they'll take that action, they get feedback, and they approve. But also as a course creator, it gives you artifacts to show and sort of as evidence of the progress they're making, right? So it's super, super valuable. And that's your assignments, your activities, all that kind of stuff. The more you can get people to publish that stuff live as well, the better. Post it to Twitter, put it on your blog, put it on YouTube. Like, and that's there's virality in that as well. And some great online courses I've done have that built in. And then the peer-to-peer piece is the cohort. It's the community. It's that we learn better from each other. And one of the concepts I popularized was this idea of destination and journey groups. And so you have a destination, which is you, the course creator. Generally, it's someone like, I've done these things and now I'm teaching you how to do them, right? So you set the destination, but people come in and join at different parts of the journey, and recognizing that as a course creator and saying, and then designing your community and your course in a way that allows people to find people who is on the same stage of the journey as them and work together. You then start to leverage all the benefits of feedback, learning from others' mistakes, just support and encouragement, all of those benefits, and just easily encapsulated in this idea that I think most people agree with, is that we learn better with each other. And so, so personal meaning, prompts to action, and peer-to-peer learning, just totally common across all the best online courses.
You mentioned obviously transformation in there as a major part of it. How many people are considering that, do you find, when they come to you versus you need to kind of help look at what is the transformation? Like, do most people have that clear, or is that something that most people are unclear on and need to do a lot of work with?
I'm going to hesitate to guess you have a similar answer to this question, and that's that no, people don't have clarity on that transformation right away. And the best example of this, thinking of a specific client that this happened with, but a lot of people listening could probably relate to this, is I was asking him, this is a private coaching client, we're working one-on-one, and I was asking him, what's the learning objective for this? We had built out his sort of journey of the learning, and we were going through each step of it, and asked him what the learning objectives were. He'd come back to me and they were like, the learner, the student will be able to understand this and be able to, will know this. And I said to him that you can't measure any of those things. You don't know if someone understands something or knows something. I said, what do you want them to be able to do? Because that's, you can measure. And he went away, literally went for a walk with his dog. And like, he did this after every one of our things. And the next week he came back and he had written his entire curriculum out, like without my input. It just clicked for him. And he was like, oh, I know exactly what they need to do at this point, at this point, at this point. And all those little points added up to the overall transformation. So anybody listening out there thinking about their curriculum, is think about it in terms of, what do you want people to do?
When you're saying that, what do you want people to do? How often is it about the results that the person's going to get of what they do? And how much is it about like being able to do something? I'm more curious about this, I guess, than anything else. Like, do you get what I'm saying?
I do. And I think it's because this is where the marketing and this, you mentioned this at the top, how teaching and marketing are quite similar. The So it's both, in that the things people sort of like actual things they can do, like they will be able to, like write an introductory paragraph, and then they'll be able to, and so like building that up. And at the end, they can write a full essay. That's the thing they're able to do. But the results could be, what do they use that published piece of writing for, right? It could like to get a job or get a promotion or whatever. And so that is the ultimate step. That's the transformation. And I think that's where marketing part comes in, right? Where that's what you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, for example, we've got clients in the language learning space, and the reason there's like 8 different main reasons that people will learn a language. So when you're teaching them a language, you're teaching them to be able to speak fluently and to be able to read, and understand and be able to listen to people and understand what they're saying. So that's the doing part. But then the thing that you're getting out of it is, it's stuff like you can move to a new country, you can communicate with your spouse's family, you're able to actually get an improved job because you can speak more fluently or what have you. So those are the outcomes. That's the thing that the transformation is. The experience when you go round to your wife's family for a family dinner, that you're part of the conversation. That's the real transformation. But that's different for one person than somebody else in terms of the outcome they get from it.
That's the perfect example right there. Yeah. And all those things you listed are the things you need to be able to do to get that outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the transformation, when you say transformation, what do you mean by it? Do you mean like the ultimate thing that you get out of it, or do you mean the thing that you're able to do, or is it both of those? Like, how would you define it if you're explaining to somebody that they need to put this together?
Yeah, I think of it as, so in learning in sort of adult pedagogy, like the most important thing you need to know going into designing a course about your students is their prior level of knowledge on that thing. So that becomes a starting point. Then the transformation is like what you said. So the transformation is for them to confidently hold conversation at a dinner party, at a dinner table with their spouse's family. Okay, so that's the transformation. So now your job as a course creator is to fill in the gaps between those two.
Yeah.
So what do they need to be able to do to get there? And they're like, again, they need to know the language. Like, how are you going to measure that, right? So like the examples you said, where they need to be able to read and understand what they're reading, and you can measure that by testing that, right? And all those, I forget what the other one is, another good example, but all of those things could be the measurable outcomes of the steps that lead up to that transformation. And that's the learning journey.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's really interesting in terms of that connection you're saying about, the connection between the teaching and marketing is there's a model that I learned about with this, where you start out with, well, where are they now? Where do they want to get to? What's all of the stuff that's the problems in the middle, like, which is what you're going to teach them. But also the starting point is not just that they have got a current level, it's that they have got fears and hopes and dreams and aspirations and concerns and all of that stuff as well that is going to block them. Now, in your course, you need to address all of those things. You need to make sure, right, whatever these blockages they have are, we're going to address all of them and going to help them to get through those. But also, that's a crucial element of the marketing. Because if you can show them in the marketing, I understand what your hopes and fears are, and I'm going to help you to deal with those, and we're going to get you through that, then people who have those fears are going to think, oh, okay, great. I trust this person now because he understands where I'm at. He gets me, and he's telling me he can help with that thing. Whereas if you just say, we're going to teach you X, Y, and Z, they're like, yeah, but what about my fear that I won't be able to learn it in time, or that I'll learn it and it won't stick, or whatever else it is,
Yeah, that's such a key insight. And I think why the best courses are taught by people who are learning that thing themselves. And they are a few steps ahead. And so that goes back to that destination and journey thing. I've got a diagram of like a ladder, basically, and you're at the top of that ladder now. But it's also just a zoomed in version of the ladder. You're not necessarily, say you're teaching a course on writing, you might not be the best writer in the world, but you are still quite a few rungs above the people that you're teaching. And that sort of proximity to them is actually important, because you can understand what the challenges were and the fears were a couple of steps down that ladder. And that's so important. So yeah, I think that's such a great insight, and also a freeing thing for some people, that you don't have to be an expert to teach a course. If you are curious and you're learning about this thing, and then, by the way, one of the best ways to learn is to try and then teach it to someone else. That often creates the best course, because for exactly the reason you said.
Now, one of the things that you brought up a couple of times in here is self-paced versus cohort groups, and having, shorter cohorts versus longer term ones. What's your thoughts about the pros and cons of each of those models?
Yeah, it's one that a lot of people struggle with, because I find people come in and they think they need to fit a certain paradigm. Like a lot of the CBC cohort-based course explosion was very cookie cutter, like 4 to 6 week thing that, it already felt like they had to fit into that. First thing I'll say is that you need to do what you're comfortable doing, and also what works best for the student experience. And the range is almost infinite. So it can be totally self-paced, and you could have incredibly compelling content and build a community around that as well. And, that could get the job done, right? As long as you create that transformation with people, all the way to kind of a coaching program like I'm doing, which the extreme version of really kind of personalized guidance and advice for people. And then in between that, the cohort somewhere in between there, where it's live, there is a little bit of interaction with you, the course creator. Yeah. So to me, I look at it as a spectrum, and there's so many kind of variables to it, but I have a good friend who does a design course, and he helps non-designers learn design. He does it in 2 days. Like he said, does it a weekend workshop, Saturday, Sunday. And it's brilliant. Like it's absolutely transformational, and it gets the job done in 2 days. And like I said, my program is 12 months. And that's just because that topic needs that amount of time. So yeah, my biggest advice to people on that is just not to feel like they have to fit to a certain thing. It's like, make it up. Do what you feel comfortable with, what you think will work for the students. That's the most important thing.
Ours is an ongoing program, and some people stick around for like a year, 2 years, and some people, after 3 months, they've got enough out of it, what they want, and it's like, okay, cool. And we said people minimum of 3 months, because like that's how long we need to make sure to get through everything. But for some people, it's like, that's the best bit. Like, okay, cool, I got the basic ideas, I've made a big improvement. Normally someone can double their revenue in that time, and then they like, okay, is it worth me sticking around after that? And it tends to be dependent on how much revenue someone's making at that stage, how big their audience is. And if it's big enough, then it's worth paying us more money to keep getting a bit better. And if they're not making that much, it's like, no, probably just take what you've learned and leave at that stage. So I'm just thinking this through from like, my experience and kind of what it's been. That's really interesting. When do you think self-paced courses, I guess by that you mean like without any kind of coach or peer-to-peer stuff involved?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. I've started thinking a lot about since I had that program. So like I said, those 8-week program almost killed me. There's no ways I'd ever do that again. So I was like trying to think, I think I've sort of got course fatigue at this point. So maybe it's like an end of year thing, but I don't want to sign up for a course that's time bound, right? That has like a set beginning and end, and I have to be on these calls on certain times, because we're all busy. We've got other stuff on. And so I actually think, and what I'm trying to implement in my 2 programs, Course of Action and C3, is C3 a little bit different, because it's a more of a coaching thing, but I'm sort of thinking perpetual community. So, it's a year, but honestly, people could probably stick around longer if they wanted. Perpetual community where they don't have access to me, and that's key in that one, right? Because it's at a low price point, but and all the content's there and it's guided and all that, but there is what I call distributed community, or distributed synchronized community. So meaning, say we have 50 people in that program now. They join in, and there's say I'm coming in, and now I know, first of all, I'm going to spend the first month like checking it out and going over content, and also I'm busy and school starting and blah, blah, blah. So next month I'm going to get started. And now next month comes and I want to get my landing page done. I want to have the ability, and I want to give people as a course creator, the ability to find, say 6 is the ideal number, 5 other people who are working on their landing pages. And we kickstart a live sprint together that is maybe facilitated by a mentor, but probably I actually think not necessarily, that it can be given with enough guidance for them to get together, go through the principles, say, okay, cool, discuss them, go off and apply them, put their landing pages out, start working on them, and then swap, give feedback, iterate, do that a couple of times, and then leave that little sprint with a fully completed landing page. Right? Amazing. And then go off and I'm going to go work on my curriculum, and I'm going to find 5 other people to do that. And in my own time, right? Maybe I'll take a break for a couple of weeks, whatever. This is all what I'm working on right now, trying to figure out how to make that sort of system work. Because I think that caters more to people's needs because it's flexible, right? It's like when you want to learn, everything is there for you to learn, and including the people to learn with.
Nice. Yeah, I've done stuff like that myself a number of times before. I think one of the things that's really interesting with that is almost nobody wants to be the one to organize those mastermind groups. And I don't know why exactly, because I'm totally happy with it. So to me, that feels like, well, you just do it, didn't you? But I see other people are uncomfortable about it. And I see that when I organize them, loads of people want to be involved. I'm like, okay, so there's a desire for this, a demand for this, but people don't want to organize it. So we've been playing around with that idea internally with our coaching program and helping people to organize masterminds. So like, okay, here's a group of people who are in a similar time zone, who are at a similar size business. Let's put you guys together and then suggest you do a call every 2 weeks and then kind of leave it at that. And that seems to work well. It's obviously more work for us, but it kind of seems to help them. So I like what you're talking about here. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, keep jamming on this because it's an interesting space, and I think it's where it's moving. It gives people that flexibility to learn all the time, continuously.
What else do you see in terms of the similarities between teaching and marketing? Because you mentioned that's quite a big deal, you think?
Yeah, I think a big one, I think we talked about this just before we started recording, is the idea of nurturing and building up a trust with your audience. And it's a classic marketing thing, right? You have your audience has got to know you first and then start to like you and then trust you to be able to buy from you. And next to that is this idea that I'm so familiar with now, having done it, is that teaching is a very intimate experience. Your students have to trust you to go on this journey with you, right? Because learning's hard, teaching is even harder. And learning, almost everyone goes through what I call the sort of dip of despair. Like they don't feel like they're learning something. They don't get it, right? And it's just like, it's not clicking. And you as the teacher literally have to say, trust me, because I was there. Like, I know that feeling. This is why it's happening, blah, blah, blah. And this is where we headed. And just trust me, if you put in the work, we'll get there. And so that intimacy and that level of people know you, like you, and then trust you is the same for both. So I just see more and more, and the people we work with are teachers and marketers, and some have like a stronger one or the other, but it's such a similar skill set.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk to people about a lot with copywriting in the marketing is you don't just write this stuff. You don't come up with it. You need to understand your audience more deeply. You have to do customer surveys. You have to go and understand what are people's fears and concerns, what are their desires, what is their aspirations, where do they want to get to, what's stopping them from believing that they will be able to get there. And then you have to address all of those things. And you don't just address it in your own words. You go and you find the words of your customers. So in the survey, if they've said, my fear is this, and this phrase keeps coming up, then you take that phrase and you put that onto your email or onto your sales page. And then you answer that thing and you show why, if that thing they believe is not true, then why that's not true. And if they have a desire of what they want to achieve, then if it's true that they can achieve it, you reassure them that they can achieve it, so that you're speaking to them and you're kind of being inside of their head. And a lot of what you're talking about here in terms of the teaching process sounds kind of similar in terms of like, right, at some point, so they'll have that initial burst, they've gone through the marketing, they read the sales page, they're excited, they bought it. And then there's potentially a bit of a dip straight after that. And then you have to get them back up again. And then like, okay, they start learning and they get some successes. Cool, great. But then at some point they feel like there's a dip, and you have to understand that in order to get them through that one as well. So it sounds like it's kind of almost a continuum of the same, dealing with those same emotions that people have.
And it is a continuum, right? You're dealing with people here. So it's like, you're constantly going to have to, come up against that and overcome that. And I think a key kind of similarity is that you have to empathize, right? As a copywriter, you definitely have to empathize with your prospects, and the same thing as a teacher with your students.
Yeah, that's smart. I like that. Okay. I hadn't thought that through in that way before, I don't think. So that's really interesting.
Oh, that's the beauty of these conversations, right?
Yeah, it's like I think a lot about the fact that, you know, that metaphor of the or that story about the blind men and the elephant. You know, the one man thinks there's four blind men and they all come across an elephant, and one feels the trunk and one feels the leg and one feels the side. And so the one who feels the side thinks he's found a wall, and the one who found the tail thinks he's found a rope or a snake, and the one who finds the trunk. And I feel like we're all metaphorically these blind men, and there's an elephant out there, and we're kind of trying to understand what it is. And the better you understand what it is, the more that you can work with it, you know, and the more fundamentally that you understand, okay, this is what marketing is, or this is what copywriting is, or this is how you make good courses. This is what a good course experience is like. The more you kind of get the grips of that and understand that, the better you can then implement everything. And so these kind of conversations I find super helpful in going, okay, I was looking at it from this angle, and I thought that I was then being open-minded because I then looked at it from like 30 degrees this way and 30 degrees that way. But actually you're stood on the opposite side and looking back. And so what's it like over there? Okay. I kind of get that's the same thing really that we're talking about, but we're looking at it in a different way.
Totally, right? Totally. It's conversational energy. And it's actually one of the things I recommend to aspiring course creators just getting started is just go have a ton of conversations. Just try to help people. And you will learn so much about what it is you can help with and what they're struggling with. And yeah, it's the same thing.
Man, this is great. I really appreciate your time today, Andrew, sharing all these and stuff really. If people want to learn more about what you're teaching, where could they go learn more? Is there any resources you've got available people could check out?
Yeah, so the best place to start is on my Twitter profile. So my handle there is Bazzaruto, BAZZARUTO. And if you go there, there's a link in my bio, which will take you to a collection of all the resources, including like this 35-page ebook, which will help you kind of get started. It's got a lot of good information in there. I've got a $5 email course on there as well, which is a little bit more sort of curated, and all the way up to Course of Action, which is our Self-Paced program we talked about. But yeah, all the links you can find in that link in my bio. And also, when you're on my Twitter page, give me a follow and send me a DM. I love hearing from people. So that's kind of the best way to get in touch with me as well and start a conversation.
Perfect. All right. And we'll put links to each of those things in the show notes as well.
Cool.
If you found this interview useful and you want to get future episodes, please subscribe wherever you listened. And thanks so much for listening today. And thanks so much, Andrew, for sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me, John.